All right, guys. So what I'd like to do for the second half of this, of glazing this teapot, is building on what we've done already. So we talked about with our first project, we were looking at Hammerly Ceramics and using him as an example, and how these glazes can kind of maybe work together. So this was your assignment for the first project, the mug, is we picked a glaze color for the base to base coat the whole thing in. And then we chose a second color for the rim of this. So we're going to kind of do that to some degree with this project. So what we did already is we did a liner glaze inside it and inside the lid. And then we coated the whole outside of the pot in underglaze. So I chose the medium blue for this one. So I painted the whole thing, tried to pay attention to the areas around the spout hole and the rim, and the flange again, trying to get as nice a line as I could. And then I did a second coat on like the bottom inch of the underglaze. So I did the whole thing in one coat, one good thick coat, and then I did a second coat on the bottom there. So now anyways, I did Brilliant Sunburn as my liner glaze. So it's kind of like a pink red. So the outside, my first coat, so on the outside here, I'm gonna do two glazes like we did on our mug, but now we're gonna have three layers. We're gonna have the underglaze, our first coat, and then a second glaze. So we'll have three layers mixing together on this, which I think will give us a really dynamic finish. So for this, I don't wanna paint this on, and it might be too big to dip, or not deep enough, or all kinds of things. So I'm gonna pour this on. So I'm gonna hold this from the bottom upside down my teapot like this. And I'm gonna pour this around. So there's I'll show you a couple ways you can do this. This one, I'm gonna just pour this over it. So I poured it there. I'm gonna go kind of quick in how I do this. And it, for the most part, gets around to everything. So by pouring it like that, upside down, I get these nice little rings that will look real nice and glassy when this is fired. So I'll show you this after we're done. But also I'm avoiding getting that on the foot because this is just fresh underglaze. So if I do get some glaze on there, I have to wipe it off, but then I'll have to touch up that underglaze. So I'm trying to avoid it as best I can by pouring it on there in those rings. And by doing that fast while the glaze is wet, you don't get seams or as much on there. If you do it real slow, if I pour some and then I wait, and then I pour the next one, you'll have overlapping seams. But if you do it quickly, you won't get the seams as much. They won't be quite as predominant, okay? So I'm holding this until this dries, which it's almost there. So I'm just gonna risk it, flip it over and set this down, okay? For my lid, I'm just gonna dip this up to like here and then come out. So this is all mixed. So I'm dipping that in there for a second. You know what I mean? This is already settled a little bit. So it's a little bit watery on top. So I just mixed it up. You can see you can see how watery that is. So I just mixed that up again. I'm gonna hold that in there for a second. And that's better. So I have the Brilliant Sunburn as my interior, medium blue underglaze on the exterior, and then I'm doing my first coat of glaze on the exterior, which I'm using a yellow. So it'll be really interesting to see how the yellow and the blue interact as the glaze melts and breaks on some of these ridges on the edge here. Also, I'm leaving some of the glaze or the underglaze exposed on the underside of the lid. I think that'll be kind of fun and funky to see. So now we're gonna pick out the next glaze that we're gonna use on this. So my next glaze is Lavender Filigree. It's kind of a purple. So I'm using that to kind of contrast with the yellow that I've chosen already. This is really different here. or it's really separated. You can really see it. So again, I want to get this mixed up really well. So I've got it on high, but I'm not pulling the trigger all the way so it doesn't come out of the bucket. But it's really getting down deep, so it's all churning up down in there. And now I'm ready to get my second layer on here. So for my lid, I'm just gonna dip the knob in, and I'm gonna hold that for a couple seconds. So just dip the knob in. That's how I want it to look. And I'm gonna hold it for like 5 seconds here and then let that dry. So I held it like that because I want that to be a thicker application. And I feel safe about that because I know there's so much surface area here. If this runs, it's got a lot of room to spread out before it drips over. So I think I'll be pretty safe with that, but it's an experiment, we'll see. So I dip the knob in there so that the knob has yellow on it first and then lavender. For this, I'm going to dip the handle in here, just the top of the handle there. Give that a dip. So I just dip the handle there. Oh, there's a little mist spot. There's a little mist spot there where I can see the underglaze. I didn't notice before, but I'm okay with that because that's just like another layer. That could be cool. We'll see how that interacts. Let's see what that looks like. And then for this, I want this to drip around. So I'm gonna further paint this. So I'm just doing it really quickly so that it dries. I'm not trying to make it look like it's dripping because it's gonna do that when it melts. So I'm just painting around this rim right here. I'm gonna flip this over. Oops, it dripped around, but that's okay. This is going to drip. And then I'm also gonna paint the spout because I want that to be funky fresh. So I'm not trying to make the drips, they're happening a little bit as I'm painting this. But we're just I'm trying to build up layers here. So I'm just kind of getting a little bit of a second coat there now. And that should be good. We'll let this dry for a second. So now with this, oh yeah, I've got some drips, but I'm okay with that. I wasn't intending on that to happen, but I'm okay with that. I've got the blue underglaze, I've got the yellow base coat, and then I've got the lavender glaze around the rim, on the spout, and on the handle, and on my knob. And then I'll check again, if you guys get any glaze on here, you need to wipe that off and then probably touch up the underglaze a little bit. But I'm gonna leave that, this is meant to drip, so I'm gonna leave that there because it'll probably blend in and do something. But I'm not trying to paint drips on here, so just like our mug, we're letting that dry and we're gonna let the kiln do the work. So we're understanding how these materials work a little bit. Okay? All right. Hey guys, so it's Monday. I just pulled these out of the kiln. So here's the finished product. You can see kind of when that glaze dripped a little bit and I didn't wipe it. I thought it might run a little bit more. And actually I thought this yellow would pop a little bit more, but it looks like I think the application was on the thinner side. So it's a little bit glassy and not quite as bright a yellow as I was hoping. And then the blue, which is a darker color, maybe ate up some of that. But still looks pretty interesting. There's some things happening on there. You can see the glaze, how it's melting together on the knob and kind of coming down the body. And there's all these these little details, like the edges on these things, seeing the blue underglaze underneath it. These other ones as well That's the, this one I did, the amethyst underglaze with, what was this, Atlantis aqua glaze on top of it, which was, it's a light glassy blue, and the amethyst really dominated it. So it's almost like a clear. There's very little remnants of it. And then I did the agate glaze as my secondary coating around some of these pieces. So not as much on any of these, as much dripping as I wanted, but I gotta grind a couple areas down here. There's the white on the inside. But still pretty interesting, a layered look. This one I think is maybe the best one here.